Welcome to the Women's Health Podcast. I'm Marika from Herasphere.
And I'm Antony Lowe, the physio detective. Together we interview leading authorities, answer questions, and share our thoughts to provide the general public with the best quality information we can find on all aspects of women's health. Please remember the materials and content on this podcast are intended as general information and for entertainment purposes only.
They are not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Now it's time to get cracking with the episode, so whether you're out walking your dog, driving the kids to school, or just sitting back enjoying a glass of wine, we hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, it's Marika from Herasphere here, and I'm here with Mr. Antony Lowe. G'day Antony, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. For those of you who are watching the video, or who aren't watching the video, I've got a map because lots of people have asked, well, they just don't realize how far apart we are. So there's a map of continental USA, and basically we are a very similar distance from LA to Washington, DC, New York City. That's pretty much how far apart we are. So just giving people an idea of how far. That's the picture that I've got as our background today.
That's awesome. I love how you've superimposed our names and there's arrows and everything. Yeah, nice one. Nice one. Hey, Antony, what's going on with you at the moment? I know that you've been somewhat busy. What's going on?
Yeah, well, you know, it's just that mad scramble, but I've had plans for this time of the year to run the masterclass, which it's like a mentoring program it's a 13-week program where we deconstruct everything and reconstruct it, and it's lots of practical experiential learning and feedback, and yeah, it's pretty cool actually. So gearing up for that, I know that it takes a lot out of me, and so I'm just gearing up for that and getting ready for
how
that.
different is it? Is it similar to the last mentoring program, or is it quite different?
It's going to be similar, kind of, but you know what I'm like, Marika. Like, everything evolves, everything changes. I could give the same talk 2 or 3 days apart, and it'll be a different type of talk with the same points. So,
yep.
Yes, it's going to be live. I'm going to re-record the lectures, I think.
Yep.
So that'll be cool. And there's more Q&A interaction, some more opportunities, awesome, so that people, because the Europeans last time weren't able to make it so easily. So being able to have times available that suit other people at different times.
And will you be asking your mentorees to be creating videos and written content?
Yeah, so it's all optional coursework activities. So there's writing activities, which I personally find the most helpful out of all the things that we do. It's the most helpful, but also creating exercise demonstration videos, creating 6-minute talks, and included in there is how to structure the talk, and giving people feedback on that stuff too. What else is there? There's video analysis. All of this stuff, has been available for a couple of years now online, and it's all super helpful if you're trying to work in an online environment. So it's kind of come at a good time and at a difficult time at the same time. But, being able to do video analysis and how you word things and what you're looking at and how to use the tools on there, and being able to generate talks so that you can always have a talk ready. The idea is to give you 13 talks on different topics, and that way you've always got a talk ready. If somebody asks you to stand up and give a talk, you've practiced 13 different times how to stand up and give a talk. So being able to be practiced and know how to stay on track and know how to convey your points,
and having that time limit. Yeah, having that time limit's quite challenging actually. I mean,
yeah.
I'm prone to waffle.
We both are. Let's face it.
So being succinct, which is actually, really important. So at university, often you have, or when you present at a conference, right, you've got a very small window. You've got to get in, say what you need to say, bang, 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 get your points across and done. So it's actually a very, very useful exercise. So when I did the mentoring program, was it 2 years ago?
Yep.
3?
2 years ago.
It's like, yeah.
Yep.
I'm just gonna, if you don't mind,
No,
this
I
is
don't mind.
totally not planned. Not planned. I was just going to talk about my experiences with it. What I found, I used to listen because I could never make the live ones just because of the time difference. So I used to listen to them walking along the river. I used to listen to the replays walking along the river and reflect every Thursday morning, and then go and do my videos. And what I found, obviously, I learned so much from you, Antony, all the time, which is fantastic. But you pushed a lot of us out of our comfort zones, made us do some things that we were, from a technical perspective, weren't really that knowledgeable about. So made us create videos and share them in the group. The group, so lovely, like such an, clearly you've cultivated a following of people that, you know, are just really, really lovely people and really helpful. So what I found was that we would share our videos and then people would give really positive but constructive feedback on that, so that people could go away, have a think about what we did, take that feedback on board, create something, and you could just see the evolution over the series of weeks is how all of us were producing like better content that was better technically, but in terms of lighting and sound and all the rest of it, but also in our communication, in our messaging, we all really evolved through that process, which I think was it was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, and it was honestly a pleasure to take the journey with you all. You know, it's been like from there, so many people still stay in contact. I stay in contact with people there. You know, lots of them have become teaching assistants for me. And you know, over that time, I get to know who you are as a person as well, which is really great. Like obviously, the more you interact, the more I get to know you. The less you interact, the less I get to know you. So, but you know, it was really good to be able to do that and catch up with people and be able to see that evolution. Like you said, you know, it was super fun, and yeah, and it pushed me too. I just remember how tired I was. You know, like I was working.
You
I
put a
was,
lot of time into that. Yeah.
yeah, I was clinical. I was clinical 5 days a week, and doing this stuff too. So, yeah, I remember
But I
it was
think you
about
can see that
60.
you love it though, because
I
you
do.
get
I
such a
love it.
buzz. You
It
can
was
see it.
great.
But I will say that those who are interested in it, if you think, because some people think you're scary, Antony, and which, you know, and I think if I look back 5 years ago, I probably thought you were scary. But once you get to know Antony, he's totally not scary. He will challenge you. He will challenge you on your ideas, but he is very, very supportive. So don't think for a second that you're, you know, not good enough, or you're going to be embarrassed, or you're going to struggle with things. Because honestly, the support from Antony, but also from the group, is really, really great. And you know, there's quite a few people now who I consider to be, you know, good friends that we've made through this process, who some of which we've had on this show.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And thank you for that. That was unplanned.
Sorry, I was not trying. Impromptu total plug of your program, Antony.
I really appreciate it. I do. I do.
That's right.
What about with you? Yeah, so my one starts at the end of April, so there's still a week left of enrollment to go. There's only a handful of places left, actually. Um,
You
but
should probably put this out before
yeah,
the
yeah,
end
I'll
of the
get it
week
out.
then.
I'll get it out today. uh, what about yourself,
Uh,
Marika?
yeah, so we're still in
Mm-hmm.
isolation, shut down a bit. Well, it's kind of funny because my husband had some chest tightness last week and like a bit of respiratory kind of, you know,
Mm,
stuff, but no cough or fever or anything. But when he rang the GP, one said, "You need to go to ED." I'm like, "You
no.
don't need to go to freaking ED. Call another GP." And another one sent him off, so he went and had COVID testing. So the annoying thing about that, well, no, we're very fortunate. I'm not remotely complaining because we actually have testing now, so
Yes.
that's huge because we didn't have much testing at all for a long time. So then he had to go to the COVID clinic. But as soon as you get tested, you can't leave the house. Like the whole family can't even leave the house to go to the shops for
Oh,
up to
wow.
72 hours because you have to wait for the test kits to come back. So That was weird because I couldn't even go for a walk, which was really
Oh, wow.
like I was getting a bit, but thankfully it all came back, back good. But apart from that, kids are on school holidays, so it's much more relaxed than trying to do the school from home. I'm
No,
not
I
calling it
know.
homeschooling because it is not homeschooling. It's
No.
nothing like homeschooling. Um, we've got one more week of school holidays, and apart from that, I'm just doing some telehealth, so seeing people from home, which actually it works really well because I see a lot of postnatal women, and my probably a bit like you, Anthony, very rehab based. I don't do a lot of manual therapy, so of course I can't check pelvic floors, but can do a really thorough subjective examination, take this through some functional tests, and then I give them exercise programs. But I'm finding it's actually working really well on Zoom because I make them the host, and then they record it, and then they have a copy of the both of us doing the exercises together with me, giving them all the cues and feedback and stuff. And then
Perfect.
they're using that for their exercise program. So then I don't even need to go and write up the exercise program,
Yeah.
and I don't need to go put things on PhysiTrack. It's actually in a way easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, that's me. Oh, and actually this week we're starting up some online exercise programs at Body Logic. So I'm going to do one postnatal class a week and one other. It's going to be a bit of a hybrid actually. It's called Pelvic Floor Up and Go. It's going to be like a low impact aerobic / functional strengthening. So for those who need a bit more sort of up training of the pelvic floor, and then some of the other ladies at Body Logic are doing ones for so endometriosis. We've got pre and post prostatectomy classes. We've got pregnancy classes. So the pelvic health team is sort of putting together a bit of a timetable. So if anyone's interested in that, you can just message me or go to
Perfect.
bodylogic.physio.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on. But this is kind of a random topic we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about neurodiversity. And before we even get to, I guess, I want to ask Antony lots of questions about his recent post, because he posted on Facebook talking about his recent diagnosis of ADHD. And I thought it would be really interesting because he's so open about it, to just talking about your personal experiences. What I want to say from the outset is that Antony and I, a disclaimer, we're not psychologists, neurologists, neuropsychologists, psychiatrists. We are talking more from a personal experience and just a general conversation. So we're not giving any advice about diagnosis or treatment or anything like that. And I know that we have that in our disclaimer anyway for the podcast, but I don't want us to come across as being experts in this field because we are completely not. So
No.
this is just, I think I
Sharing
just
a
want to make it
story.
clear. Yeah, I just want to make it clear that we're just sharing our experiences and sharing a story because we both feel that it might be actually helpful for our audience listening. So we really want to talk about neurodiversity, which is this idea that people are wired differently and that our brains don't all work the same. And so where should we start, Antony? Do you want to start with your childhood? I mean, you can lie on the couch if you want to, but tell me about your childhood.
So when I was in the womb, no, uh, um, okay. I'll start with just recently. When I went to the psychologist to start the formal diagnosis process to see if I had ADHD or not, she asked me to ask my parents a series of questions about my childhood. And so I did. I rang them up. This is back, BC, before COVID. And so I rang them up and said, on the way home, right? So it's a 40-minute drive home. And so I rang them on the way home because I would have forgotten otherwise. And so I was talking to them, and it'll be things like, how was I sitting still at school? And I just remember my mum laughing, like, and she started telling stories like, oh, you were on this school excursion once, and the teacher told me about it, and, everybody was listening to the person telling the story about whatever it was, and you were climbing on the exhibits and leaning over things and doing everything else that you're not supposed to be doing, but then you were still able to answer the questions about what was going on. It's like, so, so I couldn't sit still. My name's Antony. Some people call me Ant. Tends to be friends call me Ant. But I used to get ants in your pants because as a kid, because I just wouldn't sit still. Um, I have narcolepsy, which is where I can fall asleep anywhere. But as a preschooler, they used to put, because, at preschool they have nap time, um, and there was no nap time for me. So they asked me to lie there and try not to move around too much. But and then they would put my cot because they would pull out all these portable cots. I still remember this, right? They would pull out all these portable cots, and these kids would lie down and have a sleep, and I wouldn't. And they would put my cot like right next to the door of the staff room where they were having afternoon tea or something, because they had to keep an eye on me. Otherwise, I was elsewhere. So
You were cli-
apparently, sorry.
you were climbing the walls.
Yeah, apparently. I didn't sleep. I think I slept maybe once or twice the whole time I was at preschool. Uh, um, but but yeah, my whole childhood it was like that. And yeah, and then I just remember school. I daydream a lot. I still do. If you ever watch the videos and you see me looking over the camera, it's because I've got stuff out there that I can look at, and it helps me think. Um, but anyway, so yeah, as a child, that's what I was like. I think I was more
Did you do
hyperactive as a
well at
child.
school?
Yeah, I did
Like
okay.
academically, and did you hand in your work? Like, was your work legible?
Uh, Illegible? People said that I could become a doctor based on my handwriting. Um, but yeah. Like I'm thinking back to assignments. I was definitely the last minute guy. Never did anything ahead of time. I remember there's certain things that my dad just did the assignments for me. I think because he liked it. Like I remember having to build atoms um, for a project, and you know, basically he built it. But I knew what was going on. It's not like I didn't know what was going on. Um,
So in so my just as an aside, so Anthony knows this, but a very close family member and potentially a couple have ADHD and autism in my family. So I'm just reflecting on some of my experiences with them as well. But I do know for a lot of people with ADHD, when there's a topic of interest, though,
oh, the
people with ADHD
hyperfocus.
can hyperfocus for
Yes.
hours and hours on end. So if there's a computer game and there's a
Oh, yes.
task and you want to finish it, you could spend
Oh,
10
yeah.
hours on there, only stopping to pee and eat. So was that you through your childhood as well, do you reckon?
Yeah, yeah. I would have to get kicked off the computer. I remember there was a game by Epics called Summer Games. It was basically the Olympics, right? And diving was part of it. It was one of my favorite events. And the reason why it was my favorite was because you had to time moving the joystick at the right time to finish the somersault and hit vertical, right? And so I had to nail that. Like I had to get that right. Whereas the other ones was like in the running event, like you just had to wiggle the thing as fast as you could. Like to me, that didn't take skill. That's just brute force. But timing and technique and all that sort of stuff was cool. But yeah, I would spend hours on that stuff. I remember actually. I remember having a play date with some friends. I think I might have been in year four, year five, year six. And I remember they just didn't enjoy playing with me. And I said, why? And they go, oh, because, you hog the computer. We only ever do what you want. And it's like, I tended to just focus on what I wanted to do. So, the social ineptness was also in there. Um, but yeah, as a kid, daydreaming, Battletech novels. Like I would read. I was a voracious reader. Um, and I would see what I was reading, and I would hear what I was reading. So, sometimes it was like watching a movie. I wouldn't read fast. I'm not a fast reader because I'm looking around when I'm reading, if you know what I mean. Like I'm reading something and they're describing something and I can see it as well in my head. Like I'm watching what they're describing and I'm having a look
Yeah, but I have
around and
aphantasia, so I don't have that.
I I understand, but I didn't want to out
Sadly.
you. So
So for those who don't know what that is, I don't see images in my head. Like I don't. So when I read books, it's almost more I sort of hear the words. I can't close my eyes and see a picture, and I struggle to hold a face, even like my husband's face, which obviously I know very very well.
yeah,
I close my eyes and it's like this little flicker of a picture that disappears really quickly. Which is why I used to watch those like shows like CSI, and they have the sketch artist come in, and the witness would say, oh, his nose is a little bit more like, I think, and it used to just blow my mind. I'd sit there going, how do they do that? I could never do that. And then I think I found out 6 months ago this term aphantasia, and it was like, holy crap, that is completely me. I don't have that. I don't have that. Which is,
yeah,
there you go. That's another bit of neurodiversity, isn't it?
it
But I can hear
is.
music. I have music all the time in my head. So,
Right. Which is a different type of thing as well, right? Like that's a different aspect of it.
mm,
Whereas I don't think my wife hears the music and hears the words because my wife has it too. Um, and she can't imagine people's face. Like she sees black. She can describe people, but she doesn't see what she's describing. She just knows it.
I'm with you, Diane.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, that's
Tough.
super interesting too. Um, and and other people don't have an inner monologue. Like, I try to explain to people why I like high intensity exercise. It's because the voice narrows down to one. Because it's just a survival voice. You're going to die. Just one more rep. Just keep going. Like, oh my goodness, what I
So do
wonder what my
you?
heart rate is. Like,
So through the day, what's it like in your head?
it's just noisy. Like it's whatever. It's like stuff comes in, stuff goes out, as well as the stuff that I'm trying to think about. And obviously they can't all happen simultaneously because it doesn't work like that. It just switches super fast all the time, or it
Yeah.
used to.
So it's like you're
On
changing channels almost.
uh yeah, the way I describe it is that there's a certain like so what I did was I took some medication before I got my own medication. And I just took.
Which we don't endorse, by the way.
No, we don't. Like seriously, like I'm hesitating here right now, going, should I tell people that I just did something illegal? But I took one dose, a low dose, like the minimal dose of this particular medication, and the thing that I noticed is that things slowed down and became quieter, which is super weird because when you live with it every day, that's your normal. And so I noticed that there was a certain beat, and it's hard to time it exactly, but it's around 130 beats per minute. So it's like a rock song. It's like a dance song. And when I'm on the medication, it slows down to like 60 to 80. Like it slows down. It feels like a pulse when I'm on medication. Like it's close to my pulse. Whereas when I'm not, it feels like my head is racing. And then if I took my pulse is slower. Like it's definitely not related to my heart. Um, it's a switching, yeah. But my brain, my thoughts don't switch that fast. It just like they describe it as the motor driving you. Like that's what it felt like. It's like I gotta keep going. I gotta like it's like a push from behind. Do you know what I mean? Um, it's weird. But yeah, so when I was on the medication, I didn't feel that, which is weird because when you feel something all the time, you notice when it's not there. Uh, you say,
So
oh,
it's interesting
that's
because
weird.
you and I have obviously had these conversations for a few years now, and I remember having that light bulb moment when we were chatting about something, and I said, "What do you think about ADHD?" And you went, "Huh." You know what's really weird is it because I had narcolepsy in school and I was taking Ritalin. I remember my exam results improved quite dramatically, and I remember
Yep,
watching your face go, "Huh." Never
maybe it
thought
was
about
that.
that.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you
Because
want
I
to talk
had
about that
Ritalin.
experience? Yeah, through. So was that uni? That was uni, wasn't it?
There was uni. So I struggled the first couple of years So school was easy, right? Because, well, relatively easy because number one, computer science wasn't that hard back then. So it's like, what's a modem? What does modem stand for? Come on. Uh, what's baud rate? We used to talk in baud rate, right? BAUD. Um,
I
but
don't even know what that is, but that's all right.
it's just how fast it connects to the internet. Well, it's not even to the internet, to the bulletin board, to the modem at the other end. Um, and like, talking about all that sort of stuff was easy. The thing that I noticed about university was that my high school chemistry course, we covered most of the high school chemistry stuff in physio school in like 6 weeks. And I was like, wow, it took me 2 years to get through this stuff at school, and here we are doing it at 6 weeks. It was just a lot of study. My program, my physio program, was 25 contact hours a week, and we had 10 exams in 2 weeks. So in 12 days, we had 10 exams. That includes the 2 days of the weekend in between.
We had
Um,
my best was 14.
yeah, the
But they
most,
had prac exams in there too.
yep, yep. Prac exams as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, and so, that was kind of intense.
So
And
it is physio school is intense.
hmm particularly undergrad. Undergrad is intense. There's just a lot. 4 years of it. But
Mm.
so I nearly failed. I nearly failed quite a few subjects. I was also busy, you know. I was out every single day, every single night. Um, my my family didn't see me. Um, and then so I nearly failed, but didn't fail anything. But in second year, second semester, I failed a subject. I failed neurobiology too. So I I think I got 49, and so you get the resit, right? So I'd done like two or three resits before, and I resat this neurobiology too. But like neurobiology too, it was about spinal cord, like the spinothalamic tract and the corticospinal stuff and where it goes, like all the stuff that's relevant now for pain science. Like I struggled to study, and so anyway, I tried. I did the resit, and I still failed. So I had to carry that subject. Luckily, it wasn't a prereq. I could continue with my program, and so I went into third year knowing that second semester I would have to pick up a subject as well. So I picked up the subject, and I don't know how I juggled it, but somehow I juggled it, and I did perfectly fine. But the thing that happened was that my dad put his foot down. Now he'd been trying to get me to do a sleep study. They'd moved to Singapore um, for work because when you get to earn three times as much money and pay one third less tax, like one third of the tax that you do in Australia, you tend to just take advantage of that stuff. So off he went, and took my brother and sister, and the company paid for me to live in an apartment and flew me over to Singapore twice a year as well, which is great. So yeah, when he asked me, I'm like, yeah, go, see ya, off you go. And but yeah, when I failed that subject, he insisted that I take, because he thought it was sleep apnea. Because I was telling him I fall asleep in lectures all the time. My poor friend Timone, like she would elbow me all the time. I've still got notes where I would write messages to whoever's sitting next to me, usually her, um, and I would write these messages, and then when it came to exam time, I would have to borrow all of her notes, and that's how I got through university, because I would fall asleep. And I found out that if you stay on the lawn and you sleep, I don't remember as much as falling asleep in the lecture. When I fell asleep in the lecture, I tended to remember the material better anyway. So I must have been
You're
listening.
somehow still absorbing it.
I don't think I was absorbing anything when I was asleep, but I think I was, whatever I heard before I fell asleep, I was absorbing. And it's quite weird. So I just started going to sleep in the lecture theatre, which then led to hits, and sometimes I'd snore, stuff like that.
But it wasn't sleep apnea
It
because
wasn't, it
that
was
you were diagnosed with
narcolepsy,
narcolepsy, right? Yeah.
and they gave me Ritalin. Now, I didn't, at the time, Ritalin, you know, It was what you gave problem kids. I wasn't a problem kid. I knew that my personality was such that I get addicted to things. So I didn't want to be possibly addicted to a stimulant. So I saved them. Like I just saved it, you know. And so I used them during STUVAC, so the study vacation that we had the week before exams. I saved it for that period and for exams. And all of my marks jumped up to the mid 70s from like the mid 50s. I jumped basically 20% without having to do much different.
That's amazing.
um,
That's huge.
yeah, it was a big
And you
jump.
did you think it was because you weren't falling asleep,
Yeah.
like at the time? Yeah.
hmm I should have been taking it throughout. Maybe I would have gotten into the 80s. Who knows? Uh, but all the practical stuff was never a problem, right? Like
No.
if you, oh, like I remember reading reports, my clinical reports, and I remember them saying, "You've got great skills, Anthony. You need to study more. You've got great skills, Anthony. You need to read more. You've got great skills, Anthony. You've got to
Pay
know
attention.
this more." And it's like,
Yeah. I'm trying. I'm
I'm,
trying.
I'm trying, you know, and they would describe. I remember being in class and trying to find a transverse process, right?
Hmm.
And we had like a rugby player, like a proper professional rugby player on our course. And
He's got
he
this
was
much
also,
muscle over the top.
yeah, minimum. This dude was chunky, right? Um, and and I remember trying to find the transverse process on him, and the tutor saying, "Okay, it feels like a plate. Find his spine, find the edge of his ribs and the pelvis, and take a halfway spot, and it's in around there." And I just put my hands on there, and you know, she said it's like when you get it, it's like putting your thumb on like a dinner plate. Like it's just obvious that it's there. And so I just did it, and I went, "Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's what it feels like." And the guy that was the guy that was sitting there on the table, he was like, "Yeah, you've got it. That's it. That's what it feels like. That's when she did it. That's you're doing exactly what she did." And then somebody would come along, like the other lab partner. They'd be like, "What are you feeling?" But I could just see it all, and I could feel it. So practical was never a problem. It was studying, it was reading papers because we know how enthralling papers are and statistics. Oh, I feel like falling asleep. Um, so yes, that was university. So narcolepsy, Ritalin, um, and I did much better, but I thought it was because I wasn't falling asleep.
And then carry over into adulthood. Obviously, you've had great success in your career and you went and did another master's or did a master's program um,
Without medication.
without medication. So what made you suspect that it was a problem for you and that I guess made you think about going and having testing at the ripe old age of 32?
44. Thank you. um, look, the clinical environment, owning two practices, the hustle and bustle of it all, juggling staff, juggling quality, learning stuff. I was doing tons of continuing ed. All of that was fine. Continuing ed was hard. So I would actually sit and write notes a lot just because otherwise I'd fall asleep. But I knew that about myself. So I was able to manage narcolepsy. So all of that stuff was fine. I sold my practice and I wanted to go into education. And my wife said, look, sell the practice and work towards doing what you want to do, which is teaching people all the stuff that you've been doing. And, you know, I'm sure people want to know this stuff, so go and do it. And that was great. Thank you. And I wanted to write a book, and I've got the outline of the book still. And I looked at it recently, and it's like, this is still a good book to write. And I wrote that outline like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, like a while ago. And I wasn't able to write the book. I paid for a business coach to help me write the book. I couldn't write the book. because I just couldn't sit there long enough and do what I needed to do. And I've got so many course ideas, Marika. I'm so grateful that I've got the courses that I do, that I managed to get out. But there's tons there's, oh, if you could see my notes on my phone, like, it's coming out. Like, I got to organize my stuff. Like, I've got so many ideas. Anyway, and that's the problem. And I was frustrated by it. And then about 18 months ago now, a friend of mine, Sarah Curran, who's a physio, by the way, she's a great physio, but lives ages away from me. It takes her over an hour to get over to my way, or for me to go over there. I was telling her, I said, look, maybe I'm on the spectrum. And I'd taken an ASD screening form, and I was sub-threshold. I think the threshold on that test was 32. 32 indicates that you may have some features that are worth investigating. And I scored like 36. Not 36, 26. So I was under the threshold. But it wasn't insignificant, you know what I mean? It's not like I scored a 10. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? Are there any other things? And she just kind of laughed at me and said, you're not on the spectrum, Antony. You're like me. And was like, what do you mean? You got ADHD. I've known it since the first time I met you. And, and I sat with that information for a year. And I went, okay. And I took the screening test, and yes, I tested quite positively for ADHD. Like, it wasn't a doubtful thing, it wasn't like a line ball decision thing. It was like, oh yeah, dude, you should go get tested. That's what the screening form was saying. And so I sat with it and I thought, well, you know what? I know how to work hard. If I just assume that I have it, then I can learn what I need to do to get what I need to get done. And I've survived all this time anyway. Like, why don't I just see how I go? And so I tried to go it on my own for a year. And, last year was, it was difficult, especially around September. I basically did, including coming to Perth and spending some time with you, Marika, which honestly was something that really got me through. It was really good 2 days spending with you. I did 7. Sorry?
That's lovely to hear.
Oh, you're amazing. Love it. Even though I'm allergic to cats, I will take the medication just to spend time with you and your family.
Yeah, sorry about the sleeping on your bed.
It's okay. Like, honestly, it's okay. It happens elsewhere around the world, and it's worth it to me. Because I'm not anaphylactic, right? I just enjoy spending time with people I enjoy spending time with. But anyway, I did 7 2-day seminars across 4 continents in 8 weeks. So, yeah. Anyway, things came to a head, and that's when I said I need help. So I went and got a diagnosis, and I got the diagnosis, and then she did psychometric testing. So I had to go back to do further testing to, I guess, phenotype it, like find out where the deficits were, if there were any deficits. And executive function and working memory are deficits that I have. And she said that they explained why, like all the stuff that I'm talking to you about, I talked to her about. And she said that those deficits are significant enough. They're still like average. I think I tested like 50 to 75th percentile for working memory and executive function. But my cognitive ability and all the other things are like 85 to 95 percentile type stuff. And she said, like, that deficit, even if it's 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said, like, that can... Because I describe it as being like, I just can't get going. And I'm always on that search for the hyperfocus. Because once I get it, like, I go. And that's often why you send messages like, "What are you doing, dude? Go to bed." Because it's like, I'm in hyper focus right now. Let me keep going.
What are you doing at 2 a.m.? I was late, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know, like that can be really hard changing, like from one topic. And I know in school it's very difficult for kids. If you sort of finally get organized and you start doing your maths or whatever, and it's like, bang, siren, you got to go to your science class now. It's like, shit, hang on, I just got right. So now I got to pack up all of this stuff, move into a different classroom with a new teacher, set it all up again, figure out, so that executive, those the executive function, those like, organization, planning, all of that kind of stuff. So difficult, and it takes quite a bit to finally get figuring out what's going on. Okay, cool. I know what I'm supposed to be doing now. Bang, siren. Okay, right. Now we got to go on to the next class. And so that can be so
Yeah.
difficult. People with ADHD is actually just those switches which are expected. And it's expected of adults as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it was the settling down that was the hardest. But that's why I chose my subjects the way I did. I chose maths, physics, chemistry, computers, and general studies because I just had to throw another one in there. And so they're all right or wrong subjects, which meant that I could go just study on my own, and which is what I ended up doing. Like, I just did all the questions in the maths book. I just did all the questions in the textbooks, and that's how I got through. Because I could. And then that way what happened in class didn't matter as much. As long as I got my work done, it didn't matter. Whereas English and like even general studies.
Too much grade.
General studies is I don't know if you had the subject, but general studies is current events, and you basically write essays on current events. And so I'm quite literal, so I'm like a reporter. I will tell you what happened. Whereas they wanted interpretation, they wanted nuance, they wanted consideration of other ideas and viewpoints, and yeah. It's like, yeah, but that's all subjective stuff, man. I'm such a scientist. Such a maths brain. But yeah, exactly, right? It's just like right or wrong. Yes. So, bottom line is that...
What about...
Yes. I was just going to say, bottom line is that... for me, settling down to get started and then being able to get started was the hard thing, and still is the hard thing for me.
Yeah. What about taking a slightly different tact? Sorry, I'm just going to shut my door. Hang on one second.
Cool.
I just want to ask you about socialization, because that can be difficult for people. Hang on one second.
Yes.
So, what difficulties have you found, if you don't mind sharing this, like, in person or online, in terms of communication, understanding where people are coming from, or misinterpretations, or like, do you find that people misunderstand you, or you find it difficult the other way around as well?
Yes and yes. Like a classic example, last night, for example, a gym around the corner from where we live had a Gumtree ad on, and they had stuff that we were interested in. And so I'm messaging this guy. So obviously I'm focused on messaging this guy. And Diane asked me if there was a photo of the stepper that I wanted, right? And she goes, "Do you have a photo of it?" I said, "Yes." And then I just kept, because I was still messaging the guy. And so she asked me again, "Do you have a photo of it?" I said, "Yeah, I do. I've seen it." She goes, "Have you seen it? Do you have a photo of it?" I said, "Yeah." And I go back to it. And she's like, "Can I see the photo?"
Oh, damn photo.
And I'm like, "Oh, but that's not what you asked. Like, you asked if I had a photo of it." Like, it's and she goes, "When most people say, 'Do you have a photo?' it means that they want to see the photo." And it's like, why are you getting mad at me? Am I not doing what's consistently been done for the last 20 years of our marriage? Like, don't you think that I'm behaving consistently right now? Because I'm very literal. and she's like, ah, where, and so that's an example of what often happens. Like, it's just very much on the surface. I try not to read too much into things because every time I read into things, it's often wrong. Like, I just don't have. My son said to me the other day, what did he say? He said basically I don't read social situations well. Yeah, basically he said I'm unaware of stuff that's happening that I should be aware of. I said, yeah, but unless you point them out to me and teach me what they are, I don't know what to do with that information. Because
on a positive side of things, because you don't read too much into things, you don't easily get offended, do you?
no, because it's like, oh, were they upset? Sorry,
I didn't even notice.
I didn't even know. Oh, were they? Somebody said they just slagged you off. It's like, really? That's not what they said though. They said they were being sarcastic.
I've had these conversations quite often where where Antony steps back saying, "Were you being sarcastic?" I know sometimes I have been, or sometimes I haven't. But where you've literally just been like, I don't know what you're trying to say. Here.
It's like, what is that? What does that mean? Because it literally means something that's weird.
I don't get it. So we've had a lot of this. I have another friend who's similar, and obviously, some of my family members are like this, where they're just like, and I'm sarcastic way too much. I mean, that's definitely a fault of mine. So poor Antony, sometimes it's just like, I don't know if you're being literal or how much supposed to be reading this. So,
yeah, I just say I'm literal. What do you mean?
As an advantage, though, you don't tend to read too much into things. You don't read too much into people's intent behind things in a negative way, which is probably something that a lot of us do. And I certainly do all the time. Like, I'll read something and I'll think, what the hell does that mean? Are you... Like, I will almost think like that someone's attacking me, whereas they might just... And so sometimes in an online situation, because I know you definitely changed your tone on social media over the years, but previously you were quite blunt.
That's because I'm literal.
There's no evidence of that, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
And none of it was attacking a person, but it was very direct and people would feel attacked.
Yes.
But you never even saw it that way because you never meant it that way. And in person, it would probably come across quite different, right?
Yeah, because you would hear my questioning tone. Oh, but there's no evidence for that. Why are you saying that? What about this? Shouldn't this be what it's like? But online it comes across as there's no. I think this is what people think I'm doing, right? Ah, come on, there's no evidence for that. And why are you doing that for? And you must be shit. Like, no, that's not what's happening. Sometimes I get like that. Sometimes it's like, what are you doing? We've talked about this before. But yeah, not so much. And so I've had to learn. It's just like, why are people getting upset? Why, so many people have come up to me on courses, probably more earlier on, a lot less so these days, saying, oh, you're so much nicer than I thought you'd be. It's like, okay, oops, sorry. But they say, ever since I've been doing podcasts, to be honest, people are like, now I can hear your voice ask the questions and I can hear the way that you're asking them now. And it's different to how I imagined it. And it just makes me think, what are you going through that makes you imagine that? So it's either that or, is it projection? Are they projecting their own way of interpreting how they would speak to somebody if they were mad, for example, or if they disagreed with them? I don't know. But yeah, I do know with my learning style that I need stuff pointed out. So I made a mistake the other day. So in the same day that I wrote about my ADHD, I also posted something, just a flowchart that basically said if your child's not on fire, you're going okay. And, in the context of things, like the way that I read it is that, there are a lot of things that are bothering people, and it's not to dismiss the people who are struggling. it was a reminder to me of not sweating the small stuff. So,
Okay.
you know, and I did this at like something like midnight at night. So I'm not at my best and my filters are worn down and I'm tired. And like you say, you know, it is exhausting for people in social situations. Um, and so, you know, it just filtered in, it went through my filters and it bypassed the thinking processes that I have to put in place to consider how other people feel. Because I have to think about that deliberately. It's not innate, and I wish it was. I honestly do, but it's not. So I actually have to deliberately make an effort to think about how this would feel for other people. Um, and I have to learn by making mistakes because unless somebody sits there and says, okay, this interaction just happened and this is how this made me feel, unless I get that, which people don't do, right? Like, who's got the time? Um, unless people do that, I I've got no idea that that's happening, and I find it really hard to transfer across different domains as well. I've really been trying, but it's definitely conscious incompetence and conscious competence. It's certainly not. I haven't reached unconscious competence on that. And I'm definitely unconsciously incompetent. Like I make mistakes all the time. I don't even know it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And I can understand how hard that is, but I think that's where having good friends and family who will support you through that and kindly let you know to say, like you and like I've sent you messages before and so said, yeah, that doesn't read well. I don't think what you're trying to say is
He's
what's
coming
come out.
across right.
You
It's
might
like,
want to
ah!
read that. And you've always sort of said, oh shit, thank you. Thanks for that. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And I think, that's part of being a good friend or family member is to do that rather than, oh, he's such a jerk. He's such an asshole. He wrote there.
I do
Is to,
appreciate it.
is to actually, I guess, sometimes think a little bit behind the intent. And for, I know we've had this conversation many times before, but, having, friends and family who are on the spectrum or have ADHD and you spend a lot of time with them and you realize just the sheer amount of effort, mental energy to get through a day is huge.
Hmm.
So even just like going into a social situation and thinking, oh God, there's people that I don't know here. Is it okay for me to go up and say hi? Is that appropriate here? How do I start a conversation? What if I do the wrong thing? They're looking at me weird. Are they looking at me weird? I don't know if that's what they're supposed to. Shit, what have I done now? And there's just these like million and one thoughts. And this is probably, I guess, more coming from the autism side of things, but just analyzing everything and having that constant anxiety of doing everything wrong. And then once, if you can get through that, then it's just go home, crash. That is just such hard work. And so I think, I guess where I'm going with this is that it's really changed me in a huge way over the past sort of 10, 15 years. Is I think previously, because my brain, I'm quite, me, I'm quite linear. Like I like to be organized. I like to be structured. I think very differently to you in many ways, but in other ways we actually are very similar. But my brain works very differently and I have to be organized and structured and I like things to be done in a certain way. And, I found it really hard to be with people who were very different to that. But then having had that in the family, you suddenly, like I've had to grow as a person and really actually stop and think and be more patient. Because I'm not by nature actually at all a patient person, as you know, like I'm so impatient. Anthony's laughing because it's so true, and my family will attest to that. I'm not a patient person, but I've had
Well, I
to
can
be.
tell when you're tired, right? I can tell
Um,
when you're tired because the patience levels drop.
I get
It's
really
like,
cringe.
Marika's tired. I hope she's okay.
Yeah, I do. I hit my reserve, but I think it's been. I think in terms of my personal growth, it's been really good because it's helped me as a physio as well because we are always seeing we see so many neurodiverse patients.
Mm.
and actually, I guess in many ways is opening my eyes to that world and seeing it has meant that I've had to understand that people think differently, they learn differently, they have different communication styles. I have to learn not to read into too much of what people, say, or their body language, and actually just, give them a bit more space and time, and not assume anything, and certainly not assume the bad stuff. But a lot more understanding and patience, I think, in terms of communication as well, and just kind of going, okay, they may have said that, but is that what actually they mean? And I might just give them a bit more of an opportunity or another chance to, or just question it a little bit more and say, hey, when you said this, is this what you meant? Because I just want to make sure. So it's, it's, I think it's challenging for the people around as well. I don't know what it's like for your family, but, in my situation, it's been really, really challenging in many ways, but I do think it's been a really great thing for me as a human is to have it so close to home, is to actually open up my mind, because I think there's so many, so we've talked a lot about the disadvantages, and you've talked a bit about some of your advantages in terms of your hyperfocus and stuff like that, but what comes out of things like, autism and ADHD is, creativity and thinking outside the box. And some of the biggest, creations in history have come from people who are on the spectrum, because they're not confined to thinking like this. They think they're so out here, but what about this? And have you thought about that? And, so we've had huge, advances in technology and other things that have come out of neurodiversity. God, why am I struggling with that word today? But, so there are huge advantages to it as well. So I don't want to make it even come across that it's all, it's doom and gloom, because I think,
no, not at all.
It has amazing, potential as well.
Yeah, it's been confusing for a long time. Like, a lot of the things are confusing. Actually, just a lot of the world is confusing, to be honest. But one of the confusions that I've had is that I've never really been the best at anything, and I still am not. And yet, some things just seem super obvious. Or, joining the dots between 2 points just seems super obvious for me. And for other people, when I tell them what I think about something, they go, how did you even get to that? Like, who taught you that, or whatever? And it's like, I didn't think that was something that needed to be taught. Like, that's just obvious. And so then, you think, okay, am I super smart? And it's like, well, no, I'm not super smart. Like, I know tons of smarter people than me. So I'm not super smart. Okay, am I dumb? And I'm just lucky. I say, well, I don't think I'm dumb. And maybe I get lucky, but, I'm Asian. I'm of Asian descent. We believe in making our own luck, right? So it's like, just work harder, you get luckier. And so Marika's on mute, but she's laughing. But so I'm happy to work hard and just be lucky. And so to me, it's teachable. Everything can be broken down and can be taught. The reasons why we think it works are always debatable, but I really do believe that at the worst you can imitate people, and the processes that they think they're taking to try and work out things that are better. That's why I do what I do. Like, if I didn't believe that I could make anybody who learnt from me to become my teacher, if I couldn't help them to become my teacher, then I what am I doing? I'm just doing stuff to make money then. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I do the education stuff. I do the podcast stuff. We don't make money. We do this stuff to share and to raise and to elevate people, and to, I love making the guests our heroes. I like making them the hero of the episode, because they're just amazing people sharing the stuff that they know, and it's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I honestly deep down believe that if you want to learn how to do something, we've got uh, we've got to be able to do it in a process that makes that happen. And I see part of my work as being able to simplify that, take all the stuff that seems complicated, pick up all the common threads, put it together in a framework that's easy to understand, so that we can move forward and practice doing that and refining that simple model so that it gets us close to what we want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just in my head, I'm visualizing that red slide.
Yeah, it's the red slide. It's the red slide, the blue slide. Yeah, and the red slide came about because people are like, oh, how do you work? What model do you use? And I took a bit from here, and I took a bit from here, and I took a bit from here. And I evolved all of that, of course, because then I had to ditch the reasons why I did those things, because the reasoning wasn't accurate. And then in the end, it came down to not technical ability. In the end, it comes down to empowering people and following just some simple rules. Simple rules that can be complex, deep. I think there's depth in how those processes take place. And of course, you can do a deep dive into each of those. But the principles themselves are simple. How does that play out? So that's what the program is about. Supporting people through that journey. And I've got one person on the program who wants to do male pelvic health. Like, I know next to nothing about male pelvic health, but I know how to ask questions to help them get to where they want to go. And I'm going to have a dietitian on the program. And I don't do dietetics, I don't do nutrition. But it's going to be interesting because she's going to make the program suitable for herself. And that's what it's about. It's just supporting people through a process. Personal trainers, coaches, physios. It doesn't even matter what field they're in or what they want to do. It's just going to be able to help them do what they want to do, which is the fun part,
Sorry, my phone just started ringing. That's our good friend Edwina.
Oh, Edwina.
She must have just finished her prac exam.
Oh.
Sorry, Edwina, I'll call you later. I just wanted to ask you, I just realised we've been talking for a while, so we'll probably start to bring it in. But how do you think, because a lot of people will say, it doesn't matter about a diagnosis, it is what it is, you just treat people as they need to be, etc., etc. But, I think it's really, most people that I've spoken to as adults have said, who found out they have autism or ADHD or other things later on, have said, God, I wish I knew when I was younger, or look back in retrospect and go, all these things make so much sense.
Yeah.
But I wish I'd known before. I don't find many people wish they didn't have it, regret going through that process. I'm just curious from your perspective.
Absolutely.
Does having the diagnosis help? And if so, in what way?
Yeah. Look, that question just triggers a whole bunch of thoughts. So the first thing is that I think it's a lot better today to get diagnosed today than it would have been 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I think the support that's available, I think the understanding in the general community, because before, if you got labeled ADD, ADHD, it meant that you were a problem child, you are a problem person. Whereas now it's more of a recognition that, hey, you're wired differently, so you have different considerations and different needs, to make it feel like a level playing field. And so I am grateful for my diagnosis. It's exactly like you said, it just explains a whole bunch of things It doesn't excuse anything. I'm not using it as an excuse, like, oh, I've got ADHD, so just accept it. Like, I don't do that. Um, it goes, I got ADHD. This is what happens. I'm really sorry about that. I'm working on changing that. Not because I desperately need to fit into the way that society wants me to behave, just because that's just how I want to interact with other people. So it's me choosing to be like this as opposed to having it forced on me. And so having a diagnosis does help. My wife is quite funny. She doesn't have a diagnosis, and she's particularly blunt, particularly with me. And, you know, I'll be spinning, and she'd be like, have you taken your meds? Have the meds worn off? Do you need to go take your medication now? Because I'm on 4-hour meds, right? Like, I haven't got the long-acting stuff yet. And for somebody who doesn't have really good working memory, forgetting to take your medications every 4 hours is a challenge.
So one a day is good.
One a day is good. I can do that. So yeah, it's been helpful, and medication for me is helpful. It's difficult to say because I've only been on medication for 2 months, but it definitely, like, my wife can tell a difference, my family can tell a difference, and I can tell a difference. I get a lot less agitated.
Are you a bit kinder to yourself?
No. You know, it's genetic. I'm Asian. Like, even though I identify as a white middle-class male, like, it's just how I see myself. It's weird. And then I have to remember that I actually have Asian heritage and all the rest of it. But I'm embracing the fact that maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's just baked in there. Because my parents stopped speaking Chinese to me at the age of 5 because they didn't want me to have problems at school. So they just started speaking English to us. Whereas I was fluent in Chinese before. So, you know, it's always just been in English. I think in English. I understand white people behavior. Because that's how I identify. I think I'm a white person, and I don't understand Asian behavior, except for the working hard bit, and that does feel baked in. I'm not gonna lie.
That was such a weird tangent.
Sorry. What were we talking about?
I guess I went with my question. Like, are you? Yeah.
Am I glad?
Yeah. No, the reason I ask that is because I think, you know, sometimes people can be really hard on themselves. Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why is it so hard for me? You know, and then I think sometimes having a diagnosis, you can kind of go, oh, actually, you know what, that is really hard for me. Yeah. I can just tell people that, you know, these are things that are actually physiologically, like, really freaking hard for my brain to do. So therefore I need some help with this. I need to offload some of these things which are just too hard to other people who can just do it for me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
totally. I think what happened was that I came to accept that stuff already.
Okay.
And you know, I feel like Diane's just walked in the door, so she's going to hear me say this without any context at all. But, like, I feel bad that, you know, I often say, can you remind me to do this? And it's not because I'm lazy. It's just because even if I write it down, I'm not going to remember. And even if I set a reminder on my phone, if it goes off at precisely the wrong time, I don't remember anymore. Like, you know, like the other day, yesterday, I had to call the swim shop to find out if they were open so that I could go get the pool tested because I installed a new sensor. And so I picked up the phone and I opened up the thing, but I needed to go to the toilet. So I had the phone open. I was ready to call them. I thought, you know what, go to the toilet first, because who wants to be on the toilet while speaking to somebody? Nobody wants that. So I went to the toilet and I came back out, and in my head I had already called the place and I just forgot to call them. And then we went out and did some stuff, and then I went to the pool shop and they were shut. You know, stuff like that. Like, a difference of 10 seconds can make a difference to whether I remember to do something or not.
So this is why when I say, Anthony, can you do this? You say, I'm doing it right now.
Yes.
I'm doing it right now, because otherwise I'm going to forget.
Yes. And because you'll say stuff like, oh, no rush. And it's like, no, Marika, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. Or you're going to have to remind me to do it. And so it's not an excuse. It's just understanding that is just how I am. And so having a diagnosis, I guess, legitimizes it a little bit. But again,
but you'd already figured out a lot of this stuff, like some of where your deficits, where your difficulties are. You had got some workarounds over time anyway.
Yeah, because I made tons of mistakes. It's just about making mistakes. It's certainly not insightful reflection and preventative action. It tends to be in reaction to stuff that I've stuffed up. Basically, I've hurt people. I've hurt people's feelings, or said the wrong thing, or it's often an unawareness of what people are thinking, or how they thought about that, or how they took that away, and then I find out about it later, and then it just really hurts my heart because that's not really what I want to do, and so then I develop rules to help and processes to help. And this is all before the diagnosis stuff. And so that's why you've seen an evolution in the way I communicate online and just realizing things. And yeah. And so, yeah, it's just learning through our experiences. And I can't sit still long enough to watch enough talks or study or read papers or books. I got so many good books to read. I'm kind of banning myself from buying more because I bought a whole lot in Hawaii.
Are you talking fiction or non-fiction?
Non-fiction. Yeah, I don't have time for fiction. Oh, you know what? I do have time for fiction. I listen to Jack Reacher books on audio. What's that? On Audible. I listen to Jack Reacher books on Audible when I travel. But now that I'm not traveling, it's like, oh, now I've got to figure out something else. So.
Oh, my dad loves those books.
So do I. And they're formulaic, you know, when you listen to them back to back to back to back, you pick up the formula. But that's okay. Yeah. I like that.
It would be really interesting, Anthony, I guess this is another advantage of having a podcast, is that you can listen back to this in a few years' time.
Oh, my goodness.
And this is, well, no, because it's like, this is you're almost in your baby stage of diagnosis and figuring out what's going on and trying medication and stuff. And, you know, you could listen back in 3 or 5 years time and go, yeah, wow.
Can I tell you what I'm afraid of?
Hmm?
I'm afraid that my lack of productivity in the last 7 years will be repeated again despite having medication and a diagnosis. So I feel a real sense of I've wasted a lot of time, and I'm scared that that'll happen again.
How can you say you've wasted a lot of time? How many people have you taught the female athlete course to?
Oh, over 1,000, 1,100 or something.
Right.
I'm not saying that was a waste of time. I'm saying that I should have been able to write my book by now. I should have been able to run other courses that I've got development ideas on. You know, I should have my marketing chain done properly. The emails that I need to write that poor Diane has asked me to do for a long time. Like, do you know what I mean?
You know before about being nice to yourself? Like...
Well, that's why I said no. I don't think I'm nicer to myself. I told you that bit.
Well, I mean, for the next bit. I think if you look back and you think, shit, I ran the mentoring course I went overseas a bajillion times, taught 1,000 people, and worked in a clinic, and am a father for 3 children, and all the rest of it. So I think you've done quite a lot in 7 years. I think you could probably be.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also remember how much I sat around not doing work, and I remember sitting there trying to do all the right things to write the book, for example. And I can explain that now looking back, going, okay, so you have ADHD, it's hard to pay attention, it's hard to focus. But then, what if I do have medication and I do have the diagnosis and I still waste a lot of time? Like, that's what I'm scared of. Because ultimately I sought help because I was not productive enough.
Yeah.
And I know. People say, but you do so much. And sure, but what if I could do that more efficiently and get more stuff done? Like, would that make me happy? That's a philosophical question we don't have time for today. But, you know what I mean? I just feel like that is definitely a fear of mine, is that it doesn't change anything. Because ultimately that's what I wanted, was to be able to get work done. Now, having said that, the last 2 months I've gotten a lot of work done, except the last week. I probably have to spin.
It will be interesting to see, because there'll be some of those executive function things that won't change, and there'll be a lot of things that will. And so it'll be, I think there'll still be some things that will be a struggle, but you'll be able to focus a lot more, which will mean you'll be able to churn through some of your things for sure.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I don't know if I told you this, but this family member of mine who did some of the psychometric testing, and I think working memory was on 30% or something without medication, and then post medication it went up to about 70.
Wow.
Huge difference. Processing speed still stayed really low.
Right.
But the working memory, I was amazed at the difference, because it went from being a bit, below especially when you look at the other aspects of the IQ testing, which were here, and it was way down here, and it came up to here. So it was just, so which does increase the output so much more when you can actually remember what the hell you're supposed to be doing. So that'll be an interesting experiment for you. But I think probably what we'll do is just tie things up a little bit. And what I'm hearing from you, Antony, no, I'm not going to summarize. I'm not going to summarize everything. I will say thank you for sharing your experience. One of the reasons why I asked you to do this was, for one, you were so open on Facebook about sharing it anyway, so I thought you'd probably be okay talking about it. I do think, we personally know a lot of people with ADHD or autism, or who have children who have ADHD or autism. So everybody knows somebody. And I think for me, I really want to have this conversation because it's really important to hear people's personal experiences, because I think it helps us be a little bit more understanding. I know you, I've known you for a long time, and I know you to be actually a very kind and generous person. And, we've had conversations where I've been like, dude, you're being an idiot or whatever. And, we've had messages back and forth. But I guess what I wanted to talk about is, if we can all be a little bit more understanding, a little bit more open to thinking, is this what this person means in this interaction? Could it mean something else? Is their wiring a little bit different? Do I need to explain to them a little bit more clearly? So I'll try and cut back my sarcasm a little bit, make things a little bit more black and white, but and give you more reminders. But I think the reason why I want to talk about this is just to kind of have a personal experience for people to listen to, because I think there will be people who listen to this and go, oh my God, I have some of those same issues. I didn't really think about that before. Maybe I have ADHD, maybe I don't, but maybe I can get some help for the things that I struggle with. Maybe I need to be a little bit kinder to myself and realize that some of these things are just not how my brain works, and maybe I need a little bit of help with, or maybe I just need to use some apps on my phone or get my partner to help me with these things that I've really, really struggled with. So sort of self-kindness, but also like kindness out in the world. It sounds really, really fluffy this morning, isn't it?
No, not at all. Like, I mean, I had some genuinely heartwarming responses to that Facebook post, both in private messages and on the post itself. Even people saying, "Oh, my son has had this, and we've been dealing with it for nearly 10 years," and they said to be able to see somebody who's done what you've done, despite not knowing, it gives me lots of hope that he's going to be okay. And I do. I don't think of it as a disability. I think of it as a different ability. It makes life hard sometimes. Not going to lie, but other stuff, like apparently joining the dots, is something that I can do well. So yay preschool, and then other stuff like just the ability to question and think or think differently. I don't know. I think that's trainable personally. But so I'm happy to hear stories. I'm happy to share stories. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to ask questions. Thank you. Thank you for wanting to do this too. I really appreciate the opportunity to share it. I hope it's helpful.
And if anyone has questions, they can pop them in the little in the post below, or if anyone wants to share their experiences as well,
or just message or whatever, like we take it all ways, don't we? Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thanks everyone for listening. Pop questions below, or send a message to Antony or to me if you want to discuss further. I think for me, like my personal experiences, because they're not mine per se, they are family members. That's why I haven't been like really, because it's not my place to talk about them in particular. So that's why I've been a little bit vague. But face to face or messaging, I'm more than happy to talk about some of that other stuff, just not on a public forum. So if you want to message me as well as a parent, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to talk about that kind of stuff as well, because we've all having our interesting journeys, which can be challenging at times, and in ISO as well, which is great fun. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you next time on the Women's Health Podcast. Catch ya.
Well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to hit like if you enjoyed the episode and leave any comments or questions below. We'd really like to hear from you.
If you haven't already hit subscribe, please do so now so that you can be kept notified when we release our next episode.
Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you back with us for another episode of the Women's Health Podcast.